everyone, and welcome to Social Studies class for grade 6. Today, inshallah, we're going to start with lesson 10, and the title is Trade in the Arabian Gulf. In this lesson, we're going to discover how the people of the Arabian Gulf started to develop a trading economy. Let's see the vocabulary: condition, to establish, merchant, region, ceremony, medicinal, material, and policy. To have a clear idea about what we're going to learn about, let's think. Think about products you have in your home. What about the food you eat? How many of these things come from other countries? Write your ideas down in this box. For me, let me check things around me. I have my marker. It's made in China, so it came from China. What do you think? At home, we usually use spices. Do you remember when we studied about spices? Spices usually people bring it from where? From India, right? Do you remember? What about silk? Silk, it's from China. So all of these things are from different countries. We're using them in our home here in the UAE. Arab traders and merchants. The Arabian Gulf is a land of sand, deserts, and mountainous areas. It's hot, dry land with a very little rainfall. Because of these conditions, it's not easy to establish farms or crops in many areas of the region. Therefore, the people of the region were quick to see how trading with other countries could be a way towards economic growth and success. So, from very early on their history, the Arab peoples were traders and merchants. Of course, if their place is hot and dry, they don't have enough resources, so they have to think about trading. Let's watch this video about the Arabian Peninsula.
When many of us think of the Arabian Peninsula, we automatically think of a gigantic desert. After all, the Arabian Peninsula is home to the Arabian Desert, one of the largest and driest deserts in the world, similar to the Sahara, which is just to the west of the peninsula. If, in our imaginations, we can see anyone at all, it is a roving nomad riding a camel, herding other camels across the desert. However, that's not entirely true. Arabia is a peninsula of surprising diversity. Yes, there is a gigantic desert, and it does take up a great deal of land. However, scattered around the sides of the desert are environments that have been home to humanity for ages and have provided for some truly unique cultures. When the ancient Romans talked about Arabia, they meant a region of the peninsula stretching from modern-day Jordan south, including an area along the Red Sea that we call the Hijaz. The Hijaz itself is quite unique in comparison to the rest of Arabia in that it is relatively well suited for farming. This means that people were able to settle down into cities and then begin trading. The most important of these ancient trading cultures was the Nabateans, a group that lived at the same time as the Romans. While we don't know too much about this culture, we do know that the Nabateans grew incredibly rich from trade, as they had merchants who could travel all over the Arabian Peninsula and bring back new and exciting goods. These rich merchants liked to show off their wealth, but at the same time wanted protection. As a result, they built a number of cities carved from solid stone. The most famous of these, Petra, has architecture that rivals that of Greece or Rome, and just from looking at it, you get a sense of the wealth required to build these structures. Of the places that the Nabatean merchants were likely to go, the most famous to the Romans was a place they called Arabia Felix, or Lucky Arabia. Today, we refer to it as Yemen or Oman, which are both located on the southeastern side of the Arabian Peninsula. This region gets some rain, but not as much as the Hijaz. Instead, the climate is perfect for growing some crops that can't be found anywhere else in the world. The most important of these is incense, a plant resin that is burned in temples and sacrifices. As the Greeks and Romans, as well as other ancient peoples, liked to keep their gods happy, keeping the temples smelling like incense was crucial. Therefore, it's little surprise that the people of Arabia Felix were able to charge very high prices for an otherwise useless plant. The people in this part of Arabia had another factor in their favor. Being on the southeastern coast of the peninsula meant that they were close to the spices of India. While the prices of these spices would drop as more people traded them after Islam began to spread, any spice merchant in Arabia Felix was a very rich person. Arabia Felix was separated from much of the rest of the Arabian Peninsula by a large desert. In fact, the desert was so vast and empty that the Arabs named it the Empty Quarter. The word quarter actually only refers to part of the desert, namely the part without any oases. Needless to say, this was not the sort of place where people wanted to get lost. As a result, the few people who lived here were almost always the nomads and camel herders who we imagine as living in Arabia. Wearing heavy robes to guard themselves from sun and sandstorms, they often guided the merchants crisscrossing the desert between cities, but were fiercely independent. Whereas the people of Nabatea and Arabia Felix had written languages, these Bedouin people, the nomads who lived in the desert, did not write their language down, preferring to transmit knowledge orally. However, it was the language of this people, later called Arabic, which would be used throughout the Islamic world. Also, these were definitely not the sort of people to get lost in the desert. In a sea of sand with no landmarks, the Bedouin were among the first astronomers, using the night sky to navigate at night. If you somehow managed to survive a journey east across the great deserts of Arabia, chances are that you'd stumble on a small village clinging to the coast of the Persian Gulf. These small ports were amazingly wealthy, but always very tiny. They became extremely rich from diving for pearls, as these precious gems were and are very rare, and the divers of these small villages were lucky not only with great skill, but many oysters with a tendency to produce pearls. Also, some trade from across the Persian Gulf and further away, as well as fishing, kept the people of these villages busy, but also kept them small. In later years, these villages would develop into very rich cities like Dubai.
So, this video gave us a picture about what people of Arabia were trading in the past. By reading the text, we're going to have more information. Let's read it together. So, but what could the people of Arabia trade in the past? Let's see. The truth is, the Arab peoples had a lot of valuable commodities to trade with their neighbors. The Nabatean people from northern Arabia traded oil and flour. People near the sea traded fish and other seafood with India and received silks and spices such as turmeric and cardamom. So, people near the sea traded fish and other seafood with India and received silks and spices such as turmeric and cardamom in the south. But people in the south could grow crops and raise animals. Also, they could then trade these with people in another drier areas of the region. Another important trading commodity in the Arab world was incense, which was grown in Yemen. Incense is a kind of gum that is burned for its sweet or pleasant smell. We use it usually like we call it bakhur. Most of us here in the UAE, or I mean in the Gulf countries, they use bakhur. It has long been in religious ceremonies for medicinal purposes and in people's homes as a perfume for the air. Incense materials like frankincense and myrrh were highly prized by people from the Middle East, and we saw this in the video. People of Yemen were like giving high prices for incense, as well as from places as far away as Greece, Rome, and Persia. Trading in the Arabian Gulf has had a long tradition of over 4,000 years, and over that time, the people of the region have established trade routes complex markets, and international trading policies. It shows that even ancient people understood not just the importance of trade, but the importance of managing this trade. So here this text is speaking about the trading in the Arabian Gulf, how people were managing their life with other countries. They were buying and selling between each other. Let's answer the question. Concept check. Activity number 2. So, why is it difficult to grow crops in many parts of Arabia? What do you think? There is too much rainfall, too small, it's dry and hot. Okay. What did the Nabatean people trade? Nabatean people, they trade, it's mentioned here, flour. Okay, what did India trade for Arabian seafood? India, of course, it's what? Do you remember? It's silks because it's near China. How did people use incense? Did they use it for clothing, energy, food, or medicine? No, for medicine. Now, look at these simple drawings. Read the passage again. Draw them on the map of Arabia. We have fish, incense, animals, crops, oil, and flour. So I wrote here from the text, the fish who traded this. Pay attention that who produced this. People near the sea. So we can draw here on the map. People near the sea, anywhere here. Fish, 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 fish. So anywhere near the sea, we can draw a fish. Let me use different color for flour. Flour, I'm going to use red for it. Nabatean people in northern Arabia, they traded flour and oil. So I'm going to use red. Northern, so do you remember? North. North is here, right? Why this one is not clear? Let me remove it. North is here. So we can draw oil and flour here. Here is it. Okay, let's carry on. What's next? What about crops and animals? People of the south of Arabia. South is down, right? I'm going to use for animals and crops green. So anywhere here, south, you can draw crops and animals. Activity number 4, extension activity. Write the name of the crops on the countries where they originally came from. We have here these food. We have to see they are originally produced from where. So please, this is a homework for you. I want you to search for this food and to mention their names or the countries that they are related to. So this is, and I want you to submit your homework on Rising Portal, Communicate button. You're going to see this on your weekly plan, inshallah. So this is our lesson for today. Wish you enjoyed the lesson. Wish you all the best and see you in other lessons. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.